Hey everybody, it's Leslie from Sew Lot Creative Sewing Centers in Lexington, Kentucky and Centerville, Ohio. I'm coming to you with the month of October 2023's Kimberbell Digital Dealer Exclusive, which is the bat jar topper in 2 sizes. We're going to talk about how this is done, any extra tips or tricks to make it run smoothly and get you going so you can make lots of jars for Halloween. Hope you enjoy.
So in this project, we're going to have 2 hoopings. In the first hooping, we're going to be using wash away stabilizer. So we're just going to take that wash away and hoop it all by itself. Get that nice and snug in our hoop. Take this to the machine and call up the first part of the embroidery design. I'm going to be using the 5x7 for the regular jar lid, which will be the ears and the bat wings for the first hooping. So for this project, we're going to have a few different fabrics. We're going to have a piece of foam, 4 gray pieces of felt, cut in various sizes per the direction and per which size of design you are using, whether it's the regular mouth jar or the wide mouth jar. And then you're also going to have 2 pieces of fabric, one for the lower part of your wings and one for the background. With these, the fabric pieces, we want to fuse a piece of fusible backing to the back side of those. Can be woven fusible, SF101, Kimberbell, fusible backing. And you're just gonna fuse those with your iron. And then we're gonna take all of our pieces to the machine where we've called up the design and get ready to stitch. We're going to start off by stitching the placement stitch for our ears. Next, I'm going to take my ear piece of felt. I'm going to cover up that stitch area. You can tape this in place if that makes you feel more comfortable, or this felt tends to not shift too much, so I can kind of just hold it in place, and we're going to tack it down. Once that's complete, we're going to remove the hoop from the embroidery arm, and we're going to trim around those ears. Next, we're going to thread the machine to do the fill stitches inside the ears. I'm using pink. Next, we're going to stitch the placement stitch for our lower wings. When this step is complete, I'm going to take one of my fabrics that I have adhered the fusible on the back of, and I'm going to cover up both wings. And I'm going to stitch these in place. Again, if you would like to tape, that is something you can definitely do. Next, we're going to remove the hoop from the embroidery arm and we're going to trim around these wings. Now I'm going to take this back to the embroidery arm. Once you've trimmed around the wings on the front side, we're going to flip the hoop over to the back and we're going to cover up the ears and the wings with your piece of felt, and you can tape this in place. Once you have all of that ready to go, you're going to take it back to the machine and we're going to tack that down. I like to go ahead and trim this last piece of felt before I remove it from the hoop. Now you've got your wings and your ears. We're just going to remove this from the stabilizer, cutting as close to the edge as possible. The directions recommend about 1/8 inch away, and then we're going to use something wet to take off that excess before we move on to the second hooping. I like to just kind of cut mine out, then I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to trim really close to the edge of the stitches. Make sure you don't cut these little tabs off. These are what we're going to use to place this little guy in the next hooping. Once I have that wash away cut off of there, we still have some little remnants of it on the edges of our fabric. You can take a wet towel or something, that's saturated with cool water, and you can just rinse away these edges. This is just a Sew Line water eraser. It's used to, it has a foam tip and it's used to take away water soluble marking lines. But I figure it works for this too, so I can fill it with water and I can squeeze it and rub it right along the edges just like you would a Q-tip, but it has its own water dispensing, so it's kind of a double purpose You don't have to worry if the edges of this little foam guy get sticky. You can always slip in a replacement one. But this is a handy little tool, double duty, wash out little bits of stabilizer as well as take away water soluble marking lines. Now that we've got our wings and ears ready to go, we're going to hoop up a piece of light mesh cutaway, poly mesh, no-show mesh, that light mesh cutaway stabilizer in our hoop. Then we're going to take this back to the machine and we're going to call up part 2. Again, for this demo, I'm doing the regular mouth jar. So I'm going to call up part 2 of the regular mouth jar design file, and it's the one that looks like the circle on your design file list. So we're going to start with step 1, which is going to be a placement stitch right on our stabilizer. Next, we're going to cover that area with our background fabric, kind of making sure we have even overhang all the way around. And you're going to tape this in place. Now we're going to stitch the outside line. Next, I'm going to use the same color and we're going to stitch the jar lid line. Next, we'll stitch the placement stitch for our foam. I'm going to cover that center area up with the foam. Not the whole circle, just that last line we created. And we're going to stitch that in place. I'm now going to remove the hoop from the embroidery arm and trim around my foam. Next, we're going to stitch the ear placement lines. From here, we're going to take, and you're going to notice there was a placement line on your ear that was stitched right across the bottom. We're going to tuck this ear down into that opening we just cut and match that line up with the line that just stitched. From there, you can tape the ear in place. Same thing on the opposite side. We're just going to fit that into the groove. And then we're going to stitch those ears down. If you're embroidering on a machine that you have the capability of using your foot pedal to do embroidery with, this is a nice place to do that because you have a little more control and can stop and start it in case those ears start to shift. Otherwise, I would recommend slowing down your machine a little. Next, we're going to stitch our placement stitches for our wings. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to slide these little notches into the grooves that we trimmed. You can tape those in place. And then either slowing down the machine or using that foot pedal again, go ahead and tack those wings in place. Next, we're going to take that piece of wash away topping, the whole little bat, and cover up the center with our felt square. And we're going to tack this all in place. Next, we're going to remove the hoop and trim around just the felt. We're going to leave the wash away topping there to protect our wings and ears. So as you trim, it's always helpful if you pull that fabric up and away, so you're actually pulling it towards your stitches, to make sure that you're not clipping through that wash away topping or the ears or the wings. So I always like to lift towards the stitching, helps me to get closer for my trimming and protects those extra little pieces. Next, it's going to stitch the decorative stitch around the face or the body. Next, we're going to stitch his little nose detail, so I'm going to change to a pink. Next, we're going to stitch his fangs and a little nose detail. And finally, we're going to stitch the mouth and the eye detail. I'm using black thread for this. In the directions, it does call for you to use the black embroidery topping to keep anything from showing through. I will personally tell you, I didn't find it necessary, so I did not use that in this particular step. In some instances, yes, but here the stitching was very dark, and
well filled in, so I'm just gonna stitch without the extra topping. From here, the embroidery is finished. So we're gonna remove the hoop from the embroidery arm. If you did use that extra topping here, you're gonna peel that away at this point. We're also gonna peel away all the extra wash away topping that was guarding our wings and our ears. If you have any left over, you can wet that and get rid of any extra edges that it may have caused. And then we're gonna remove from the hoop and trim and insert into our jar lid. So once we've removed it from the hoop, we're gonna trim along this outside kind of decorative key stitch edge so that we have a little bit of overhang when we attach it to our jar. Just make sure you don't cut off your wings and you're cutting away the stabilizer as well as the extra fabric here. Next, we're gonna take our jar lid, center that on it. If it's helpful, you can tape your wings down in the center as you put this little guy on. Just gonna pull up his ears, pull up those little wings. If you have any stitches like I do, creating our bat jar lid topper. Thanks for joining me as we stitched out our jar bat topper for October 2023's Kimberbell Digital Dealer Exclusive. Remember, the design file type does come in two sizes, one for a regular mouth and one for a wide mouth jar. So you've got a couple options. You can fill these up with all kinds of goodies and get going. You could even just create the lids and make ornaments out of them, hang them in a tree. I think it would be fun to use some glow-in-the-dark thread to stitch some of these components out. So lots of fun things that you can do with these cute little bats in the jar toppers. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And if you like the video, please make sure to like it below and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Lots of other content available for you there. Thanks. Have a great day.